Three, two, one. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're at in the US and around the world. Welcome to Baseball Outside the Box. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, especially on Facebook Live. If you're there, YouTube Live, if you have any questions, write them in the comments section, and we will address those questions during the show. First of all, don't forget, go to baseballoutsidethebox.com, and that is the audio. Subscribe, get all the great updates there. You'll get updates on every show, and go to YouTube, Peter Caliendo, subscribe there. You can watch the actual shows live, or you can watch them later on. It's a lot of fun seeing the actual guests. I really enjoy the YouTube channel. I think you'll enjoy it also. And thank you to everybody for in the US, around the world, for spreading the show, because we're in about 100 countries where coaches, players, and parents are listening to us. And we really appreciate that. And special thanks to ESPN Honolulu. Next week, we'll have some guests, coaches from Hawaii. I think you'll really enjoy that. We've had a couple already, and it will be a lot of fun. So let's get rocking and rolling with the show. Don't forget Facebook. If you got any questions, I can see some already joining. If you got questions, just let us know, folks, and we'll be glad to get those questions answered. Today, we're going to take you again around the world. We love going around the world because you know what? Baseball is great in the U.S. and a lot of countries, but you can learn so much from countries everywhere in the world and what they're doing in the game of baseball to maintain good practices, organization, how they organize their leagues, how they keep players motivated and long-term playing the game. It's a lot tougher in a lot of countries because they're competing, as you know, with the national sports of soccer. So, but they do a great job. So let me welcome, I'm going to go in my past. It's going to be interesting because it's been a while since I talked to these guys, and folks that have listened to the show, you know, I coached in Belgium. It was a great learning experience for me. Did I make mistakes? A ton of them, but I learned from those mistakes. But, you know, it was in one of my greatest times in my life as a coach. It was my first time ever managing. I was fortunate to manage a national team, but I was also in charge of the 5 national teams that Belgium had. And I got to tell you, I went a little too far. I tried to throw too much at them too early. But I'll tell you what, was there talent there? There was a ton of it, and great coaches, great players. It's not a big country, but they have a lot of good players. I was very impressed with the players. Really enjoyed being with them. So let me welcome, first of all, the former national team coach, 11 years with the senior national team. I've followed him. He did an outstanding job. He was actually our first baseman. Now he's the 18U national team coach for Belgium, Sven Hendricks. Sven, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great, Pete. Thanks for having us. Nice to see you.
Well, I should have had you a lot sooner, but a time whenever we can get going and talk about Belgian baseball, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I got to tell you, I don't know if I ever told you, having you on the club was an honor because you were a professional all the way when it came to playing the game. You set everything by example, and you carried that into your managing in 11 years at the national team. You did an outstanding job with the national team program.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. I'm actually starting to blush right now.
Yeah. Don't worry. But again, it's been a while, so it's going to be great catching up. So let me also introduce with the Federation, Filip van der Meiren. He does a lot of things because he was a former player, but he coaches. He coordinates the national team program, which is a huge job because you're talking about, not just the seniors, the 18U, the 15U, the 12U. There's a lot of levels at the national team level. He also does a very important job, and that is coordinating the coaches program, education. Has a great background in that. And these two guys, I'm sure, work together fantastic. Let me welcome Filip. How you doing, Filip?
I'm great, Pete. Thanks for having me for sure. We're watching some podcasts, but it's nice to be in one myself. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and you guys deserve it. Let me tell you. Everybody deserves to be on just to talk about baseball in their country. But, you guys have done a really, really great job. And we're going to talk about, the Belgian baseball. Matter of fact, as I think about it, let's talk about that right away, Filip. Let's start with you. Give us an overall view of Belgium baseball, the organization, because we're talking about Belgium Baseball Softball Federation. We're talking about the French side and the Flemish side, coordinating everything within the country. So talk about how that is organized and, how everything kind of flows throughout the year.
Yeah, we live kind of in a strange country where you have, of course, 2 languages, the French-speaking part and the Dutch-speaking part. And unfortunately, sports is funded regionally. which makes it tougher, of course, as a national federation to raise money. But the both leagues actually contribute their piece of money also towards the national federation. So it's more like a triangle situation. Not too many countries in the world have that kind of a system, I think, which makes us a little bit of unique, which also has a couple tougher things to handle, of course. But after all, it's about the sport themselves. So I think everybody went on this in the same direction. It's manageable, of course, and politically it's a little different, but of course that's the country we live in, and it's more like a national federation that operates with national teams and national competitions, where the promotion side of things or the recruiting of youth players or programs, it's more on the regional section actually. So that's how it's more structured. So a little bit different than most European countries, I would say. But
yeah, interesting. And obviously, when you have a French and the Flemish side, yeah, it takes some communication. What about the number of teams? Number of players, kind of like the clubs. What are they structured with age groups?
It depends from club to club, of course. Like in most European countries, it is like it's not like it's a college program or a high school program. Of course, it's more like real clubs that are which all the youth members, the adults, they do it as a hobby actually after their work or after school. So it's a little different, the organization. And certain clubs have a senior team, or certain clubs have senior team and softball combined with baseball, or only have youth, or you have certain clubs that only have a softball program. Or even some clubs just have a recreational team, like just play slow pitch. It's depends from club to club. But we can say that most of the clubs are actually active on either both sports, like baseball and softball, and do have some youth teams. And some clubs are bigger than the other ones, but it really depends from region to region a little bit, and maybe from club to club. So.
Sven, I was going to ask you also, obviously I coach there, so I know the little bit of the system. And you belong to several clubs, as Filip, I'm sure, has belonged to certain clubs earlier on. What's the challenges of each club? What are the difficulties? Because you guys, again, have done a very good job in developing the sport there, but what have been the major challenges?
Well, I think one of the challenges is getting enough members to build a good enough club to maintain a good level of play. Getting you to play baseball is really difficult in Belgium. First of all, we're a small country, so we don't have that much people living here. We got 11 million people. Right now, there's like, Filip told me today, like almost 3,500 playing members in Belgium, but that's baseball and softball together. Mm-hmm. So I think the toughest thing is get people to get into baseball, and then the second one is to prevent the dropout. Kids age 16 to 18 got a lot of stuff going on. First girlfriend, other sports, the PlayStation generation. So they got a lot of different things to do besides of baseball. When we were young, our mind was set to baseball, and that was the only thing basically. So getting the members and then keeping them in the sport, that's two tough things to do.
Well, I tell you what, I think you hit a grand slam, and I'll tell you why. Because when you talk about trying to get somebody to play a game at a young age, that's one goal, as you said. The second goal is try to keep them. And later on, we're going to talk about coaches' education with Filip and you. But before we do, I want to mention, the other thing is, in Belgium, I thought when I was there, I thought there were some pretty good athletes too. Yes, we didn't have a lot of players for the national team like most countries may have, but the athletes were really good. And both of you guys, Filip, start, what attributes to athleticism some of the guys that I saw in Belgium? Is it other sports they play, or where are they getting that from?
I don't know if I have a specific reason why it is like that, but like you mentioned it, I think for a small country like that with that low number of members, I think we are able to manage internationally, then European level, I would say, to at least get decent results. But you see some difference, for example, with seniors maybe compared to with under 18s. Like I've been involved with the under 18 team a long time, where it was always like getting into that A-B pool system, like also it's like we had certain good players that were able to manage and compete with higher level teams, but the depth within certain rosters, even in the national team, was not.
Right.
We were lacking a little bit of depth of number of quality players. I'm not saying that the other players were low quality, but I mean to really be competitive with the top teams was kind of tough, and that has something to do probably with the depth general. But yeah, I think baseball, softball, it's an attractive sport, I think, for certain kids. And what we've seen also is like mount to mount commercializing. I mean, you actually say a lot of kids that play now are playing that game just because their dad played it, and we're not being able to find a good appropriate possibility to get it real into a school system, just because schools don't have that much interest maybe in a small sport like that. But I think with the talent we have, I don't know, like I said, I don't know why, but we are being able to manage at least some decent results, I think. I don't have a specific reason for that, but maybe it's because of multiple sports, maybe because they start later. I don't know. I don't know.
But good points. I think those are good points. Some of them. It could be a variety of different things. And the other thing is, I remember when I was there, I'm going to go back in history a little bit. When I was there, I remember, I was scouting with Toronto as an assistant with Wayne Morgan, international scout. And we were able to take, I don't know if you guys remember, 4 players down into instructional league. There were several of them. And we didn't take them there because I didn't take them there. The Blue Jays took them there because they saw something in them. That's why they brought them there. They weren't going to spend the money to do that unless they saw that. So I thought that was very impressive. Here's another part I want to ask. There's some during the pandemic and even before the pandemic. Okay. Another challenge might be the financial part, because the federation is funded partially, some money, I believe, from the government, but also each club has to do something to be able to be successful. Let's start with Filip and talk about, how the financing works, because especially now clubs are losing money.
Yeah, the main issue for clubs right now, when they, for example, as a federation's point of view, we want to be active within the sport as soon as possible, but also the fact is, like, clubs operate a lot with their income from their clubhouse. When people come and watch the games, and then a lot of that income from clubs comes from the clubhouse. So, and the talk is with the pandemic right now that, okay, what is the priority, the clubhouse, or is it playing the sports, But I think for Belgium, most Belgian clubs, it's going to be the combination of both, of course, because you want to play, of course, but you also want to create some income, because I think as soon as you can play sports, but you cannot generate any income. So far, we don't have any information yet that clubs are really into, financial problems. But yeah, maybe once we start playing and there is no income generated, problems might occur. I don't know. But I think for the situation as it is right now, we have to wait and see. I think a little bit. That's the main key answer on everything. A lot of things right now. We have to wait and see, but we have to see how it goes. I think with the club situation.
Folks, I don't know if you've never been to Belgium, gorgeous country, beautiful. I stayed in Antwerp, unbelievable place. Just so much history and just character. It's awesome. Sven, I remember, and by the way, on the finances with the clubs, part of it is when the fans are there, they might eat, they might drink some beer, watch the ball game. Clubs are making money. One benefit is the beer's outstanding, one of the best in the world. So, right, at least you're going to make some money because the beer's there. Sven, as a manager, I want to ask you this, and it kind of goes away from what we were talking about from the finances just for a second. I want you to address how you handle this. When I was there, I didn't want to go in and say, this is how you're going to do things. And one of the things in Belgium, after ball games, everybody relaxes, right? They go in, sit down together, which is nice, you know, and they have some drinks together and all that. It's a different culture than it is here in the U.S. in a lot of ways with our teams. But at the same time, it builds camaraderie. You talk baseball, you know, you have a good time together. One of the struggles I had is that, you know, I remember I made a rule where, look, you can do it, but I just don't want you in uniform, especially with the national team, because I felt that, you know, being in uniform was different. And I felt that it was better, you know, that if you're going to do that, that's fine, but without without uniform on. What is there any challenges? You know, you were a player, then you managed. Any challenges with that, or with managing players that you played with?
In the beginning, it was kind of tough because there were a lot of players that I managed that I played with before.
Yeah.
But the longer I was at the helm of the team, it went better and better. Rules like no drinking in uniform that you applied, we applied also. We even applied the last couple of years a no alcohol policy on tournaments. So the word was out, no drinking, guys. But whatever they do in their room, you don't know that.
Right.
But that's what we try to do. We're very realistic about the fact that we're amateurs, but we try to create a professional possible environment for those guys. We try to provide good hotels, good transport, nice uniforms, so they can relax, and it's giving and taking. The more they're comfortable, the better the actions on the field, I would say. And in my term, I had luck to have real talented ball players. A lot of them played abroad in Germany, in Holland. So I think that was a key factor also, because they were used to the higher level of play. But I think the camaraderie, the bonding between players is one of the key facts that we had good prestations on the field.
Yeah, I love that. And I love it because I want our coaches to learn. Sven, the other part is, you know, during your time with the national team, as we mentioned, and Filip mentioned it, you don't have a lot of players. So as a manager, coach, you have to somehow be disciplined, but at the same time, be careful how much discipline. I don't know if that makes sense, because you might lose a player. Now you don't have a third baseman. You know, it's easy to say, like in the U.S., we got 3 of them, right? And you're going to be a little tougher, a little bit more strict. How did you deal with that in your 11 years managing?
It was tough a lot of times, because my mind a couple of times said, you got to do this. If somebody's not coming to practice, it's like 4 or 5 times in a row, you got to cut him. But on the other hand, he may be your best player and a difference maker in a tournament. So it's not like we can cut a guy and we have the next one ready, like in bigger countries in Europe, like Italy or Holland. They're basically almost at the same high level, but we have those key 8-9 players on a good level for Europe, but the 11th and 12th guy isn't that good. So it for sure it wasn't a straight line. We had to bend the line a couple of times to keep those guys involved that weren't at practice all the time, didn't show up for minor tournaments and only for the big tournaments. But I followed, I tried to get the best results possible on the field, and I think that's where you have to get those guys on the team, but be open about it. Talk to other players what your idea about all the whole situation is, and I think we managed that all right.
Yeah, I love that. That's that fine line, and that's what managing is all about. And trust me, there's a lot of coaches even in the U.S. that if they're in that situation, it's not that easy. It's a whole different ball game. Understanding, European baseball, because it's not the same as it is here in the U.S.
Pete, can I add something on that too? Because I think Sven brought up a good thing also. Like I said, when Sven was since 2009 with the seniors, I've been with the under 18 since 2006 all the way till 2000. I think 5, 4, 6 or 4 years ago or something. But my mindset was also, once you're on the national team with the under 18s, for example, it was also in the past, because I've played also in the under 18 team, and my mindset as a manager back then, also with the under 18s, was also that we're trying to create the mentality that winning is more important than participating, especially on that national team level. And because that's kind of the mindset in a lot of sports people, I think in general also. And I think it's okay at a certain level, but at a certain time, I think it's important that you create a certain mindset that the focus transfers more to winning part, especially with national teams. And I know the participation part is one thing that's important, but to be on a national team, you got to be selected. And once you go out to a national European championship, it's all about that winning aspect too. And I'm not saying at every cost, but I mean, winning part is quite a big factor, I think, to create a certain mindset towards that the winning part is going to be more important. I think with transferring that mindset also with those younger guys, I think we were able to, we've done a pretty good job, I think, and Sven can reply on that also, creating a new generation of players right now that we have, especially with the under 23s, with the 2 bronze medals, the last 2 European championships. I think guys coming from that system also towards the senior team, I think they have a different mindset right now too, where that winning part is more important. And we have been lucky, like Sven mentioned also, that we have had a good generation of players that played abroad. So and a good combination, a mix of young and old together, with everybody on the same page, going for good results. So that's a good thing. And we had to, because there was some frustration too sometimes in the past with the mentality you mentioned, maybe a little bit back in those days, where like it's does a federation need to spend that much money on the national team that's drinking a uniform, back then.
Right.
And that's mindset, I think, is gone completely at the moment, and which is good.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And the other part is, you guys building this culture. How did you get young players to see how important or what a great goal being on a national team is? Because that takes a little time also, right? Because they may make a decision, do I go on a national team or do I go, I don't know, to the beach or go do something else?
Well, I don't know, Sven, you or I go first, but for me personally as a coach, I think it's you gotta show them that you care about them. That's one thing, because I always compare it like, you have to show them that you really care about them. And once they really bite for that, they will eat out of your hand, I mean, if they really you have the feeling that you really want to make them better as an individual, they will do everything for you. And I think that's important in coaching, that you find the way to an approach a more personalized approach to each individual. And I think because in the past I had coaches too saying, I don't like to coach that player that much because he doesn't listen to me. But it's not about he doesn't listen to me. It's about you need to find a way to let him listen to you. It's kind of it's the other way around. And I think if once you keep going that route, you can let players do a lot for you. I then think
Absolutely. Sven?
Yeah, I think what Filip said was a good point. We as coaches need to adapt to the situation and to the individual players, and I think that's something in the past that didn't happen too much. And now we're like you said, Peter, you're in the game for like 200 years. We're learning every day, and that's we need to get better ourselves and find a way to create that good atmosphere. And I think we did a pretty good job last couple of years. I always say we as coaches are as good as the team we have. So if the team bounce well and listens, and that makes us better coaches, and we get to find a way that they listen to us. They don't have to adapt their personality or how they play. We need to find a way that they listen to us.
Absolutely. And the part I love is, that the listening part, because I think that's changed all over the world, listening more to what players have to say, and get their input, have them be part of the process, folks. That's important. One of the reasons I started the show was because, one, I wanted other people to learn from others, not just in the US, but around the world, but also for my own reason, right? Because every time I'm talking to people like you guys, I'm always learning something. So I'm actually doing it while I'm doing the show. That's what I love about the show. You know, Filip, now let's talk, because we want to go to the grassroots level. And I'm kind of jumping back a little bit to what you said earlier. And we're two key areas. Both you and Sven said it. Get the players, keep the players. Okay, so let's talk about that. Difficulty all over Europe because, and it's difficulty in the US too, but it's difficult in Europe because we know that there's other sports, and soccer is a big sport and kids love soccer and it's a competitive thing. What have you guys been doing in the last 4 or 5 years to try to get kids to play the sport that maybe can help other countries or other clubs or whoever to, you know, get more kids to play at the younger levels?
Yeah, well, first of all, the analysis about the fact that how many new members we get in, how much, what the percentages of dropout, for example. The analysis they did for all sports within in Flanders, and or like we can compare it to Belgium too, but the thing is they had like a 25% of dropout, you know, in all sports. So not only in baseball or softball, but I mean in general as sports, and that's around the number we are getting to also, the 25% dropout. Of course, the new the new members that are coming in, it's a little above 25%. So the last couple of years since 2010, since 2010 it started actually, where we really slightly went up, and I think it's within the business plan. It's we try to get growth of 3% every year, which is not very high, you could say, but I mean, keeping in mind that you have the 25% dropout, I think as long as you can grow, it's still good, of course. But well, of course, the last 2 years it's kind of tough with the pandemic, and then now this year also we have to wait and see to get people in or to get kids in. For example, a couple or adults also, couple things maybe that we did in the past were like creating, for example, like a slow pitch league, also stuff like that, where actually a lot of new people, adults came in, and getting kids in was like, yeah, as you probably know, the b-ball situation where they translate the rules and stuff like that, more applicable towards the youth kids, which we try to set up, which is in the pipeline at the moment. We try to really set up like a school program where different schools play each other like in tournaments. In the last couple of years, we are able to do it. An organization which was funded by Coca-Cola, and we were able to do it like that. It was actually more like a situation. They every school that put a Coca-Cola machine in their school, they could have a free initiation, you know, and we were able to use that. That's been eliminated. That organization has been quit with that project, but at least that's something that you have to keep in mind. Try to do something similar out of the federation himself. Also, you need to have the funding, of course, the people that get the volunteers in, at least give them a volunteer fee to do something, because if it's a major project, if you do it all the way all around the country, but try to do something like that to get more towards schools, and maybe ideally try to work around a certain club. So try to set up like a school tournament within a certain community, and then try to get the kids to the school, to the club themselves. So that's something. And maybe the b-ball 5, it's kind of starting in the starting phase right now to try to set something with the baseball 5. Sorry, the baseball 5 project.
Explain b-ball.
Well, b-ball, it's actually more. Originally it's from the Netherlands. They actually had the setup with the younger kids for 4 to 7, I think, or 4 to 8, where they play like with 2 bases. Actually with 3 home plate, first base, second base, and back to home. It was more like a triangle game where. And the focus is actually not, as we know, it's not the adults game just on a smaller field or a different field. It's more like the focus. It's more like the different mindset in the game, where it's more like a running and tagging game, you know, where kids really catch the ball and try to tag each other to make outs, and not the focus that much on the throwing part yet, because that's where it goes wrong, of course, with little kids, in the 4 to 7 year olds, when they have to throw to bases, a lot of things goes wrong. And I think from what I've seen, working in schools, like I've done a project with the community I live in 2 years ago. We've done it just by going from school to school and give initiation to every school once or twice. And then the kids could apply with their class. They could apply for like a tournament. And the first year we had 30 kids that just voluntarily showed up to play the tournament. Only within the community, everything we covered maybe like 500 kids, and 30 kids applied for the tournament. And the next year was 60. But then it was a kind of there is no club around, and then we kind of faded away, of course. But if that project can be transferred towards a local club, I think, which is maybe lacking with youth kids, with kids, I think it's a good opportunity for a club to start something like that, and maybe get some recruitment. That's.
And speak about the club, Sven. You're with a club, so here we are. Your club's got to recruit young kids, and it's all about getting kids to play the game, because if you can't get the base, the foundation, then you're not going to grow. So you have a good, successful, organized national program, but you also now are recruiting kids. Sven, what are you guys doing with your club? Are you doing something different? And I want to say, if you're doing something different, also remember, you know how kids are. If you're going to introduce baseball, it better be fun right away, right? If you go to a school, they see something boring and they're standing around, they're not going to want to play that game. So anything you guys do differently, or pretty much follow the same path?
Yeah, pretty much follow the same path. I think the key word in all of this is volunteers. I think going to schools is a great way to get kids to attract to baseball. Keep it fast. Also, let them hit and run, and I think that those are the key things for kids that don't play baseball. I think hitting with a bat as a kid in Europe is something great to do. American kids are raised with a bat, but here in Europe, it's special. It's still something special hitting a ball with a bat. So, but you need a lot of volunteers to go to schools, and I think that's a problem we have. People to get people involved to actually go to the schools. People that have time to do that. Because I'm pretty sure if you go to all the schools in my neighborhood, there's gonna be kids that come to the club and stay at the club because it's pretty cool hitting a baseball. Keyword is volunteers in my eyes.
And I agree with you guys. I found, because anytime you go to a school and the kids get a chance to hit, boom, they love it. Now, if you're just going to play catch, they're not excited too much, but they're more excited to hit first, and they like throwing also. Filip, because I'm going to segue into the coaches part in a minute, but you mentioned there was a 25% dropout rate in sports, correct?
Yeah, correct.
I did want to ask, they did that study, but did they do a study of why kids were dropping out of the sport? Do you know?
We do it every year as a federation to see why. We send like a survey out to only with our members, of course, but I don't have any probably general thing also. I think why people, or why, because it's not always kids that like Sven mentioned, like the 16-18-year-olds. It's a difficult age, but a lot of adults drop out also. Because of the fact that, but most common answer, I think, within the dropout scenarios is more like, I didn't like the structure within the club, like the coaches, or like injuries, or no time, because it's an intensive, if you, I'm not saying it takes a lot of time, but back in our days when we still play Saturdays and Sundays, of course, at the moment it's a little different, but back in the day when they play Saturdays and Sundays, your social life as a 27-year-old, 28-year-old, and you're getting to know your girlfriend, and she start talking about kids. I mean, and you say, okay, half of the year I'm gone Saturday and Sunday. It's not always easy, but yeah, the most common answers, I think, it's just social life. That's one thing for the older people, and with kids, it mentioned a lot, like I didn't like the coach, and then that's kind of tough as a federation. It's kind of tough to.
But that's a good point, because I want to talk about that. But before we do, the adults that are playing, sometimes they quit because of aches and pains. I think age, my bones hurt, so they don't want to play anymore. But that's another area.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, Sven, you go, and then Philip, I know you wanted to add something about the bat, I think, or the throwing, maybe, because I saw your expression. But Sven, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add something about the dropout that I don't really get. A lot of good players in Belgium, when they quit playing, they just quit the sports. They're out of the sports, and that's something I don't get, and I regret that, because when I quit playing with aches on my shoulder and stuff, baseball is a passion for me. I had to keep being the sport, so I became a coach, and that's something I don't really get, and I regret that good players in Belgium just quit the sports after their playing time.
Yeah, and I saw Philip. I mean, when I was there, there was a few later on. I saw that they quit, and I'm wondering, wow, And I know for a fact when I was there, I could name two of the players that would have signed a professional contract, but they didn't have the passion for it, and I think the teams see that, right? Philip, go ahead, add what you wanted to add.
Yeah, no, Sven just, I mean, nailed it. I think that's one big part of the play when players quit. For example, myself, I did quit because I wanted to coach. I was still able to play, but wasn't my downside already. But my coaching microbe was so intense because as a former PE teacher, I got into coaching as a young age when I was 16. But as soon I had that feeling where I couldn't. I always told myself, once I'm going to go to a practice and I don't want to go. That's for me going to be the turning point and say, okay, that's time to quit. And then I said, okay, I'm going to go into coaching while I was still playing. What I was coaching when I was still playing, but that's it. Then that's when I go into coaching. Regarding the fact that little kids getting into the game, I think you can maybe compare, like, and I think it counts for all of Europe. I think at least I know for Belgium, but you can call it maybe baseball and softball. You can call us a sleeping giant, because once the sun comes out in spring, every PE teacher goes outside, and the first thing they do when they go outside is they play baseball. I mean, and it's not the baseball as we know, but at least they put like 10, 20, 15 cones out. You hit the ball, you run as far as you can. You throw the ball back to a certain cone and you say stop or stop running or whatever. You give them a blow, a whistle or something. But the kids do like that. Okay, they play 12 versus 12, but it's very passive, and that's where I think the key issue is. You have to be able to make it attractive to kids to really go and play the sport, because that's how I got passionate about it. Just by the same situation, we're playing on the play yard with school, play the game. And like it was different, but I said, I want to do this. And my mom and dad told me, no, you're not going to do that because that's too dangerous. And I said, okay, I kept on nagging for a year, kept on nagging. And then I had to go, and then they said, okay, stop nagging, you can go and play, but you have to get there yourself. So I drove my bicycle every time to practice, 3 times a week to play the game. And that's how I got passionate about it. I mean, I was passionate right away, but I think once you can offer it attractively, I think it's going to be easy. To attract kids, because every kid, once they have that bat in their hands, they want to hit that ball as far as possible, of course. Yeah, and it's all about the fact how you bring it to those kids, I think.
That's why on the show we talk about this next topic being the most important topic anywhere in the world, in any sport, any part of life, what you guys are talking about, because without this next area, none of the things that you're talking about is going to happen. And that is coaches education. If you've got the right coaches, if we're talking about going to the school and attract the kids, like Sven said, well, you got to have the right coaches to do that. If you have a coach that doesn't know what they're doing, they're not excited, they're not motivated, that's going to make it more difficult. So, you guys have been doing a coaching program for a long time. And it's so important, I believe. Talk about that, how far the coaches education program has come in Belgium, what you're doing now to help the coaches on a yearly basis.
Yeah, it goes actually in 3 layers, I would say. First of all, we have some obligations towards the government regarding coaching education, and from what I've known to other countries, it's kind of similar, but on the other hand, you can say it's different because one thing is that the government actually not really advises just to have a coaching program, but they really give it as a structured framework to play in, try to make it as short as possible, but they actually more say in every coach course we have like 4 levels of coach education, which starts with initiation, then instructor, and then trainer B and trainer A. That's kind of the levels of coaching. And they give us like a framework to working. That means that for technical side, we can actually manage it ourselves. Of course, there is certain requirements that say it has to be that many hours of a course. But the general part, like the really didactics about how to teach, how to organize a practice safely, and the criteria for that and stuff like that's more set up by the government itself. It's of course it's one course, but they have like a general curriculum. They say that needs to be in there for sure. And then the sport technical side, that's in cooperation with the federation to write those courses and to set that up actually. So that's how it's organized on the government side. And then we have actually more the step-in phase for parents to get involved. That's we apply the b-ball educator, I would call it, where we try to recruit parents from kids that start playing b-ball, from new kids. Sometimes it's new kids, but sometimes it's just also parents that just are doing something else for the club. Just try to get people involved into that program, so at least they get the basics of the game and why we do that b-ball setup. And then within those two things, actually, we and that's new since 2 years. We try to also bring something on the table for the existing coaches, that former players, for example, that do not want to take the time, because the general mindset, and I think maybe it's like a lot of people that played a lot of years of baseball or softball themselves have the tendency of saying maybe like I've played that many years, so I know quite a bit, But as you know also, and Sven knows also, and everybody knows that at least coaching on a good level, that our game changed a lot the last 10 years, and you have to adapt also. And therefore, we actually have something in the middle, try to offer like workshops, a theoretical part, but also a practical part. Try to get people involved that do not want to take the time to do really the main courses, I would say, because there's quite some hours involved. But at least offer them some new philosophies, some new approaches within like a coaching academy, like offer them some short workshops of 3-4 hours, and stuff like that. So that's actually the 3 pillars, I would say, regarding the coaching setup that we try to offer.
Great stuff. Well organized. Sven, the other part of this, as a coach's program, you mentioned you're going to have players drop out, and you wonder why, and I do too. I wonder, why even in the US kids will drop out, at a certain age. But if they really love what they're doing, they'll usually continue here in the US. As the other part of the coaching program is that you're developing not only good players long-term, you're hoping as a good coach, you can keep players in the game longer. But if later on, when they do leave the game, even at an older age, you hope they come back as a coach, right? To coach, because if you taught them, they were taught well. If Filip taught them as a player, they were taught well. So hopefully they will coach. What do you see in Belgium when you get coaches that are coming back to coach? What's the major struggle for the coach? What's the most important thing they're having problems with, and how do you address that with your coaches?
I think besides if they're in the game long, I think the toughest part for coaches in the beginning is the communication with players. A lot of people in Belgium, we're kind of a we're shy people. In general, Belgians are shy people, and coaching, it needs some communication. You can't be afraid of talking against a team of talking to a group of 15 people. You have to let them know that that's no problem for you. I think that's one of the keys, communication. It's a very, very big part for a beginning coach. Besides of all the technical things that baseball is around, you have to communicate really good. And I see a lot of coaches struggle with that.
Yeah, and that's very difficult, not easy. Philip, same thing. You know, think about it. You go through the coaches course? What are the coaches struggling with the most, and how do you guys
Yeah. Well, I see the most, yeah, the communication part is one thing, yeah, because like Sven said, I think the people I get within the coach course from the entry course, so I would say it's people maybe that not always having been playing a whole lot of sports themselves, you know. Sometimes it's just a parent, but and what I've noticed a lot is the communication part is one thing, but also the organizational part, like how to organize, you know, because what I've seen also is whenever they don't know how to organize themselves, you and I always try to trigger them because the setup is kind of like whenever they give like a lesson to each other, like the micro teaching, and they give each other some topics. I always try to trigger them with making that let them make those mistakes during that practice setup. Where like an example of that is, for example, like they have a hitting station. To apply a hitting station, would have like 6 different hitting stations, and they do 6 different drills, and then they have a certain time in mind, like and then they move on to the next station. And as you see with stuff like that in the beginning with those people, it's like they don't track the time and they get messed up. And after that, I always ask them, were you able to give every player information at every station, you know? And I know because of my time, and then I always use the example. Maybe it might be easier, as you say, you make 2 stations, and you can be 3 groups doing the same drill, 3 groups doing the same drill, you know, and stuff like that. And then you have to maybe an assistant coach also. At least you only have to focus on one focus point on that station, but at least you can see them all do the same thing. And that's the organizational part, I think, where a lot of people in the beginning, even, and I'm not talking only beginning coaches, I'm talking also guys that played maybe for 20 years, but don't have the didactics about how to organize like a lesson. Just and it doesn't matter what if it's baseball or softball or it's soccer. It's about giving a practice or setting up a lesson structure where they have some difficulties with the didactic side of really giving of teaching, you know. That's an important thing factor. Not only the information you have, like your backpack can be loaded, but if you cannot deploy it the right, I mean, use it the right way, that's a tough situation sometimes.
Yeah, 2 great points. And I want to ask this question. Both of you guys answer this because we're coming close to the end. I want to talk about the academy a little bit also. But before we do, as coaches, we all know this, especially in baseball. One of the most difficult things is, you know, you're going to fail. That's part of the game, right? You're going to strike out. You're going to go for 4. You're going to make mistakes. And there's quite a few of them compared to other sports. We all know that. How do you guys deal with the failure, you know, a player going through a tough situation failure wise? As coaches, how do you address that? How do you teach your coaches to address those issues? Because if they fail too much, you can end up losing your players too. Sven?
Me myself, I have to say it's the club compared to the national team. It's a different world, because with the national team, when a guy is 0 for 8 in 2 games and striking out 5 times and really looking bad, I have to replace him to win the 3rd game. I have to replace him. I have to do something. In a club team, that period is longer. You can go to a slump longer, and you can talk longer and more to that player. With the national team, if a player is 0 for 8 and I replace him, that's really tough to handle, because I have to address it. I have to communicate to him why. Normally he knows it, but it's tough because he was a starter at the beginning of the tournament, and at the end of the tournament he's not anymore. So he's really down, and I don't have the time to get his mindset right, because it's only a week. In the club, you have more time to let him fail. It's not that important. If he goes over 8 in 2 games, you give him 2 more games and maybe he's out of the slump, so it regulates itself. If not, you can talk longer and more. You get 2 practices a week to work on things, especially his mindset then, because I think that's the most important. When people fail, it's most of the time it's not a technical thing, it's mostly a mindset thing. When he takes himself out of the game and he takes himself down. So I think that's a different world. The national team, you have to win and react immediately. In the club team, you can take the longer approach to it.
Filip?
Yeah, same thing. I always try to cover also like the word fail is kind of like, yeah, it's the hidden agenda in our sport. You fail more than you are successful and still be a good ball player, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you think about fail, I always say that to myself also, fail is like the first attempt in learning. So it's like you have to get into that head to also not to let them worry to fail. That's one thing. And I think it's an important factor with for coaches, and it can be applied on any level. But I think it's right to get them more in that situation at practice where they or where it's more um, where it's easier to fail. You know, in the game, like it can be, it's tougher to fail because everybody's watching that game. But during a practice, I think try to find more situations where players can fail. And what I want to say with that is more like maybe practice more game-like. Try to create those pressure situations within practices. I think it's an important factor. Also with youth, um, and it can be done in a game. You know, it can be it doesn't have to be like a real baseball game, but like try to approach that practice more in a game type of atmosphere and reward them, or like at least let them see that, okay, we didn't make that out, why, so they can learn during those kind of situations. And hopefully, yeah, that transfers of course towards the game, because they're used to be more in that kind of situation at practice. We probably will make it easier during those games. So that's it. That's it. An important thing, I think, during practice, that you try to address more game-like practices.
Yeah, all great points. Love it. And that's what I love about the show, is that we can share all this with our coaches in the US and around the world. Guys, this has been fantastic. I want to finish it off with, because another great program. I want you guys, and Sven, you could start, or I'm not sure if it addresses more Philip's responsibility, but I want to talk about the Academy, the purpose for the Academy, what it does for younger kids. Is it another goal? Because, not only is it, you have a goal maybe to play at the Academy, but also at the national team. That gives them more goals. Let's talk about the Academy.
I think
Go ahead.
I think the goals of the academy from the beginning were to build good first division players, then build good national team players, then build players who are able to go to college, and then build players that are able to play professionally. I think Filip will add in a moment, and I think we started in 2008 with the academy, and I think our two bronze medals in 2017 and 2019 with the under 23 shows what the 10 years of academy did. I think that's a big part of winning those bronze medals was the academy, both the Flemish and the Wallonian academy. The thing is, the academies are pretty small. We need to get them bigger to get our top bigger. First, get the base bigger, and then get our top bigger. Maybe that will get us a little bit further.
Filip, explain the how the academy is structured. How does it work?
Yeah, it's two academies, one in the French speaking part, one in the Dutch speaking part. Originally, we started with the mindset that like we wanted to have like the better players at a certain age level, get them together more frequently. It's not like in some other countries, like we play like in competitions or whatever like that. It's more like an on top of the club level extra practice setup that we do mostly in the winter time, where we practice 3 times in the week with the academy, and then most guys, they practice another extra practice with their club also. But the mindset was from the beginning just to give players that had a little more talent than other guys, give them more frequently information with the ultimate goal that they could perform easier at the national team level. And I think, like Sven mentioned already, the example, that's the first generation of players that were able to play in the under 23 competition, and we won that bronze medal the first time and the second time also. But on the long term, it's like building a stronger fundamental base towards the seniors, of course, and let them go through the academy system. And we've been lucky in the last 10 years, of course, that MLB International was involved within Europe with those extra kind of tournaments and getting the best kids from all over Europe together. Stuff like that helped us out a lot, of course, regarding setting that package up, and of course we're hoping to keep continuing that, and keep building more players within, for at least for minimum requirement is a first division player. Of course, it's going to be a matter of that those players find their way all the way to the top towards the senior team. Of course, that's the ultimate goal. But I think so far, yeah.
What a great opportunity for young kids. The academy is roughly what age?
We had various in that time frame of 10 years. We tried out a couple things because we did not originally start with the academy in Belgium and because other countries were already doing it. So we were able to shift it a little bit. Sometimes we started in the beginning. We started off with the minims, so the under 12-year-olds, and then we added cadets and the under 15s, and then the under 18s and stuff like that. And what we've seen in the past also right now is like there has to be a possibility to develop those kids too. And what I mean with that is like not every age category is already that advanced yet for the kind of practice we want to offer. I don't know if I can, that's clear, but what we want to do is try to create a practice setting where it's more individualized and try to not generally just develop more players, that's one thing, but more try to take it to the individual and try to develop the player himself to make him as successful as possible. Because I always try to say when I talk to parents and saying also like, yeah, my club doesn't want this player to the parents say that to me, that the club doesn't want the player to practice that frequently with the academy. And I always reply to the parent, okay, but the talent your kid has, it's his talent, it's not the club's talent. You know, it's kind of I think it's important that individuals can choose where to develop and try to develop their own talent as much as possible. I think that's an important factor for that. So, and the academy just one opportunity, of course, because if it takes another route, that's fine too. You know, as long as it's available for the national team, I think as a national team program, we don't have to care where that player has been developed, as long as he can contribute to the national team. So,
yeah, and coaches, players, parents around the world, as you're listening, we talk about this on the show all the time. You know, kids need the practice. Even in the US, we're playing way too many games and not practicing enough. And so, Sven, you know, on the academy part, I want to ask you this part. A couple things. One, I'm assuming this, and I think it's cool if they do that. A great opportunity. These kids at the academy get a chance to play with other kids in other academies in other countries.
Well, it doesn't happen too often. We once in a while, I think once a year, we try to set it up with some Dutch academy or French academy, but it doesn't happen too much. We're going to tournaments, and that's where we meet other academies regularly. We play tournaments in Prague and in Stuttgart, where but that's then only a week. I think maybe we should look into this further and play on a weekly or a 2-weekly base against the Dutch academy, because I think on the contrary, like what you said, I think practicing is important, but I think our guys need more games at a higher level. They really need to play games at a high level, and that's where we lack. We can practice a lot, and we're using all that fancy stuff like a Rhapsodo, or we do the exit velo and stuff like that. But as long as they don't really compete against other good nations and good academies, the games are going to give us an extra edge, I think.
Yeah, and that's a great point, folks. You know, remember we talk about European baseball. Yeah, a lot of places in Europe play on weekends, so they don't play a lot of games, and you need more games compared to here in the U.S. We play too many games, more practice. But you know, so that's an excellent point. Listen, guys, you've been fantastic. The way I'm going to close it off is, obviously there's something out there that you guys are doing in Belgium, whether it's coaching or whether it's something about managing or a program. Anything else you want to mention to close the show off? This is the time to do it, and then we'll close it off. You know, Filip, I could start with you. Anything else we didn't talk about Belgian baseball? Just something you want to say to folks in the US and around the world about the game in general, about maybe coaching, especially coaching, because coaching is so important.
You get another hour for that? No, no. I think regarding coaching, I think the only thing I might to add also is like it's a never-ending story and it's a continuous process. I always look to myself as a coach, and I'm very critical about myself, and regarding the fact that as been mentioned before already today, also like you can always be as good as you. I mean, you can make your players as good as you are, but I think it's important to keep on learning yourself, and yeah, it's not like it cannot be the thing where you say I played that many years, now I know it all, because it's not true. You just keep on going, and every year you find something new. And that's why these shows, of course, are important too. So we can learn from each other, like you said, Pete. But that's an important factor, I think, as a coach, that you keep an open-minded view and be critical, evaluate yourself every year. What did I do wrong? What did I do good? And try to keep that process going in the most efficient way, and then find ways to get better yourself. So
Excellent. Sven, that's why earlier I asked, and I ask everybody on the show around the world, I always ask them about how do they deal with, and I know the word failure is a negative word, but when they're not successful, how do you deal with kids? How do you help kids overcome that? That's why I asked that question earlier. So what are your thoughts as far as coaching? Any last minute advice out there, Sven?
Yeah, I think we as coaches need to understand we're there to help players and to teach players, but we also need to understand that the game is not about us. The game is about the players. They're the most important thing about the game is the players. I see a lot of coaches that think that the game is not going to be played when they're not there. That's not true. The game is going to be played as long as they're players. We don't need umpires. We don't need coaches to play a game. You just need the players. So I think we need to understand that we're not the most important guy on the field.
All right. Great way to end the show. Great job, guys. I got to tell you, keep up the great work. I'm extremely impressed just by this show, because we've not talked in a long time, but I follow some of the things you guys are doing. Filip, fantastic job. I think one of the things you've done also, and because I'm older, but you guys have brought in some younger people with fresh new minds, creative ideas. I think that's important too in life, is to make sure you have younger people have an opportunity to coach or be in charge of a program. So that way there's, new, fresh ideas. I love that. And you see Major League Baseball now, you're seeing a lot more younger coaches in Major League Baseball because they do have that open mind and creativity. I think we need it in coaching and in general. So Filip, you guys have been great, man. Fantastic. Thanks for being on.
thank you. Thanks a lot
Thanks
for having us.
Sven, same thing, man. Great seeing you. And thanks for being on the show. You guys did a fantastic job. I'm always here anytime I can help you. Folks, that is the end of the show. I want to thank Sven Hendricks and Filip van der Meiren with the Belgium Baseball Federation. What a great show. Great ideas, great topics. Special thanks to Brian Crocker, our producer with the Lineup Media Group. Special thanks to everybody in the U.S. and around the world for sharing the show. Don't forget, baseballoutsidethebox.com, the audio, Pete Caliendo, YouTube. Please share the show with players, parents, and coaches in the U.S. and around the world. Everyone, remember, stay healthy, be safe. God bless you. We'll see you on the field, and we'll see you on the next show.